You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 11, The Summer of 1995, featuring Jody Taylor. This episode of Find the Good News is sponsored by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. Check out our work at parkerbrandup.com. Would you like to help make sure I'm asking my guests the really good questions? Just visit findthegood.news and click the questions tab. I'll see if I can get your question dropped in the fishbowl. Each episode, my guests will dive deep, select 3 random questions, and if yours is selected, I'll ask it on the show. That's findthegood.news. Jody Taylor has been working behind the scenes to bring live music and art experiences to Southwest Louisiana for over 20 years. I asked him to share some of the heart that beats behind these events on this episode of Find the Good News. Jody traces his inspiration for organizing creative events directly to the summer of 1995. That's when local youth collective Pourquoi Pas changed the music scene in Lake Charles before a scene existed. I could see it in his eyes and hear it in his voice. Jody is still chasing the magic of that summer. He's held on to that passion, and he uses it to make the past present by bringing us some pretty damn good events.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
I've done, mostly print interviews before.
Yeah. I've read a lot of them.
It's kind of interesting too, and you always see those after the fact and be like, did I really say it like that? Is that what my intentions were? So, with this kind of format that it's, this is me, this is my voice. So,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
I know exactly what you mean, man, because I like to write and I can sit there and manicure it, and I personally, that's kind of what I like about this format is, just getting kind of all that fake stuff and false, because ultimately here's what I think. I mean, when I ask somebody to come on the show, typically it's because I think they're doing something good and I think they're a good person, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I started with the show, is like, let me make my own list. And then that's kind of arrogant and egotistical if you really sit back and go, I'm going to make a list of who I think is good. And then, you start going, well, who the hell are you, jackass? And it's like, are you even good? So anyway, after I got that out of my system and had a little self-reflection on that, I said, okay, well, let me put it out there, because that was the second wave was, now that I've got a few people that are coming on the show, let's see what's going to happen if I ask the community. Mm-hmm. And so I've asked every guest to kind of go, hey, now that you've been on the show, think about a couple of days and shoot me an email or whatever if you think anybody that would be a good candidate for the show. And man, I was blown away. And how eager people are to come talk.
Right.
And then 2, how many people there are. Mm-hmm. And just all across, you said it when we were visiting, I go, all across the spectrum.
That's right.
What drives them is different. And what's beautiful is the common things also. And I'm going, that's just a cool thing. Again, like we were talking a minute ago, you've had some tragedies and some negative things or hard things, heavy things happen, mm-hmm. but how those things, for as hard as they are on us, sometimes they generate generate good for somebody else. You know,
Right.
and we don't even know.
You have no idea. That's right.
Your transformation through maybe grief or loss of any kind just kind of flips it around.
And, you know, oftentimes in the regular pace of the day or, you know, whatever, you don't necessarily tell people that they inspire you.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a little bit a second ago about how do you maneuver in this world, you know, in your industries. And, you know, coming in to the Arts Council, I struggled with who I was, you know. How much do you show? How much do you let out? And, you know, you see someone like a Tom Trahan over here at Brimstone.
Yeah.
Who is just who he is.
Yeah,
like,
right.
take it
I
or leave
agree.
it. And that's an inspiring kind of, oh, okay, he's, you know.
He's doing that. God,
he's
man,
doing it. Yeah.
that's funny you bring him up, because I have the same thought. I go, how do I be me?
Right.
Right?
How much is me?
How much is me? How much is what I'm putting on a little bit? Not that's fake, but just putting it on so I can get through to because everybody wants professional, you know, and everybody,
Right.
you know, I'm like, but Tom is himself and it works, right? And so nobody ever says, I sure wish Tom would tone back some of the Tom, you know, dial back the Tom. They like Tom. Actually, let's pause right there and talk about your journey here, because people listening, some people are going to know you and some people aren't.
Right.
So tell me where you're at and how you got there.
Right. I started in May with Banners at McNeese. It's a long-running arts and humanities organization that operates within the McNeese system. So we have a brand new team over there. I'd come from the Arts Council of Southwest Louisiana as project coordinator there. So, you know, we did everything from Live at the Lakefront to Spring Art Walk, you know, mainly events that promote the arts. So that's a little bit of my background in this industry.
Gotcha. Actually, Ashley's coming on the show too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think she's coming in next week. So
Awesome.
it'll be neat to have you both on here.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Well, so I met you. I'd seen you around, and you lived in Sulphur, right? Did you go to Sulphur High?
I did. Graduated in 95.
Okay, so I think that's where I originally had seen you when I first started kind of encountering you through the Arts Council. But mostly people just talked about you. I'd hear your name, and I guess you had been orbiting around the entertainment and music scene for a while, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I got started back in 20 years old, maybe, getting involved. I was inspired by another group that had opened a collective venue downtown, Pourquoi Pas. And this was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
When absolutely nothing was downtown.
Yeah, you're talking closed businesses.
Right.
The
Shuttered
lights are all,
windows. That's
right.
it, man. Yeah. And it was really inspiring because it was a group of young people who came together, and, you know, they had these weekly meetings and discuss the direction of the venue. And it was all inclusive. It was a club. It was a community, which I think is something I've always chased, you know?
Yeah. And you've got a lot of memorabilia from that, don't you?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. We keep talking about an exhibit or something in the future to celebrate that. And, you know, I just think it was such an interesting time, especially seeing how far that downtown area has come since then. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of what's going on in the downtown area, to me, I think about Pourquoi Pas a lot. You know, I guess I might have just missed that, but I do remember it. So I was probably out of high school and, you know, still living in the area at that time, but I was maybe a little, in my own mind, whoever knows what that was at that time period, but I thought I was a little too old to go there. So I remember driving by it and just seeing like what I called kids. Of course, I was still a kid. But
Oh,
I
we
was like,
certainly were.
You know, it's like, oh man, look at all these kids just hanging out down here. And I remember it kind of stuck out because there was nothing else open. It was just sort of, in my opinion, back then, downtown was sort of no man's land. We
really
just didn't
was.
kind of drive down there or go take a walk or anything in that area.
Right.
So weird, man. Now, when you meditate on that, how much has changed.
Yeah. I would love to find some pictures of that area back then. I think that's something we've been searching for. So if anybody out there listening has some, that would be...
You know what's, from that time period especially, I actually have some photographs from probably 2004, which really doesn't seem that long ago, but even since then a lot's changed. I had been through a divorce and I moved back to Lake Charles, Sulphur to be exact, and so I was kind of starting over, in the advertising industry. I'd come out of the sign industry, and nobody wants a sign guy. When you're trying to get into the advertising industry, everybody sort of looks at the sign guy like, oh, signs, they don't really do, that's not really advertising. And it's hard to make that leap. But anyway, so that's neither here nor there. But I hadn't had a vacation or a day off in years. I mean, it was just, honestly, I hate to say it, trouble to trouble, just hardship to hardship, trying to just make it. So I'd never take time off. I'd always go to try to up my job status, but then you get into a new job and you're not getting time off immediately. But this one employer, I guess he kind of knew. He could tell, like, it's so. Or one of my coworkers went to him and said, "You need to just give him a day. He doesn't really have any vacations, but look, give this guy a day." And so I was like, so thankful, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so what I did that one day off that I had is I parked my vehicle and I just walked all downtown and took pictures all day. And dude, I got some interesting pictures. The old Sears building. I went in there and got all these pictures of just graffiti and people living in there. And honestly, people like kind of strung out in there, sleeping it off. I mean, it was just wild. I was whole nother world downtown, and even down there where like Blue Dog was still kind of, there's a lot of broken glass and built, so even back then it was still, there was like a line at night that you just sort of, you didn't park down there,
Yeah, I was certainly drawn to that community right off the bat. I mean, I'll never forget, I think I was a junior year in high school getting invited to a house party show. And, that changed my life, man. Going and seeing that community and being accepted so readily. I'm bringing in my Zima, and like just totally not fitting in. But, it was such a great community. And I've always been a music guy since I was a kid. So not... And it's not MTV. It's not, which, was I watched as a kid.
Yeah, sure.
From the beginning. But, it's actually right there in front of you. These are people who are making music right in front of you. And I immediately responded to that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot of people did.
Right. Yes.
And that kind of gets into that deeper thing we were talking about earlier, acceptance, and people want to be seen. They want to feel like they belong, and that kind of, I'd say Pourquoi Pas probably nailed that, right?
That connectedness, most certainly.
Yeah, if you're feeling like on the fringe, you can go there with this group of people and just enjoy some music and have a good time, and nobody's like heavy judgment on you.
That's right.
Yeah, it's funny how we use judgment so much as a tool, and we think we're doing good with it, but really a lot of times we're just driving people away, which ultimately drives them further in the direction that we're trying to pull them back from with our judgment,
Right.
It's a strange catch-22. So Pourquoi Pas, you in that era, so you're interested in music. When I started hearing your name was whenever I was on the board for the Arts Council, and I think you were about to come on, and they said your name. I go, oh yeah, okay. I had a picture of you and I knew your name, but the way they described you was, oh, he's been helping us for years. I mean, he's been coming to the events. He's been, helping us organize things. He's always volunteering. And so and I was like, man, how have I guess I just never really realized. So, made me kind of wonder when you came on, they were like, had this pedigree that they had about you. And I thought, how many people are out there like this in our community that are just working their butts off behind the scene just for the sheer, I love this.
That's correct.
That's it. That's what you're doing. I love this. I want more of this, and I'm willing to give my time. And that's it.
Prior to that, it was just for the love of it, and it still is, of course. But, it did become a job, and it was something I did as a career. So, that's just a blessing. I mean, it's unbelievable. And we spoke a little bit about this before, too. It really did turn on a dime. Charles Talon, Ashley's fiance, is we ran into him one night out, and he said, hey, we got a position available at the Arts Council, and I applied, and he was highly recommended me. So really my life did turn completely around at that point. So I'm very thankful to him for that.
Yeah. So you go to the Arts Council, and you say that your life turned around on a dime. What does that mean? Like, how so?
I traditionally had done a lot of retail work, warehouse inventory, that kind of stuff, and booking bands, managing, promotion.
So you were doing that too as a gig, like okay.
All of that was on the side, just as a hobby.
Gotcha.
So just because we loved it and we loved the community, and it was a whole team of us that put these things together over the years. So that's how that started.
I got you.
Right.
All right. So that's interesting, man. A lot of people, I was listening to these guys. There's a podcast I love called Business and Biceps, which that name is deceptive in my opinion. You should check it out. Actually, you'd probably love it considering things we've talked about earlier. But they talk about that the world is kind of telling you, and your parents tell you, get out there and get that college degree, man. Get out there and do this, and it's sort of the model everybody's doing. But these guys are not preaching that. They're like going, look, man, I mean, you can get out there and do something with your life. If you got a talent and a passion and a brain, you can get educated and learn how to do things and make your life out of that without having to follow that course and fit into one of these blocks that's out there. Yeah. So in a way, you kind of are talking about that. All this managing bands and all that. You didn't go to college to do that. Right. You don't get, that's like passion education, right? I mean, that's you're correct. Doing that from just doing it and loving it.
Yeah, and all those things that I did primarily from in college, I had no idea that this was all preparing me for a career in the future. It was just doing things that I loved, whether it was the booking shows or, I worked as an editor at the Contraband, the McNeese newspaper, which, taught me so much about interviewing and pagination and, all these kinds of things that really served me now. So it is true that you should follow your passions, your hobbies, your loves. Aside from what you expect your career to be, you never know where these other these loves will lead you.
Oh man, you're right. I mean, and even the things that you don't love. I mean, I think about all the crap jobs I had, and I say crap jobs. Hey, at the time they weren't crap. They made the crap. Now, in retrospect, I wouldn't want to do them today, but the things that you learn on those that are completely, in a million years, I couldn't draw you a line to the job I do today. Mm-hmm. But I can see how some of those things I pull from them, even with this advertising business, definitely. So yeah, I think sometimes we get in this, I don't want to do this, man. I'm sitting here flipping burgers, and man, I'm serving up coffee, man. What's this got to do with what I want to do? I think I hear a lot of kids talk like that, man. Like younger people, they're like, I'm not doing what I want to do. And man, it's like, you just don't know. Mm-hmm. But this thing you're doing, it's the Mr. Miyagi. It's like, you're not waxing cars, man. You're learning how to block a punch.
That's right. So,
yeah, we just can't see it. It's a classic flip flop.
Right.
So all right, so you go into arts and humanities, and you go from doing what you love as a passion, you're doing it as a job. Mm-hmm. So what changes when you start doing that?
Not really that much.
Not much, okay.
Not much. I got to say, I've always, I have a clear kind of set of goals that, that lie under everything I do. One of my passions is to, diversity. We talked about diversity a little bit before.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing that drives me in this area, especially. There are a lot of different communities of people. Some of the happiest moments I've seen in the past several years were, whether it was an event that I put together or just one that I was attending, where people felt comfortable at that moment, and more welcome in their city. Or that someone is speaking to them or, directing to them. So that's something I always strive to do, is to make people feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, you don't want people to go, oh, this is arts and humanities are McNeese banners. They're having an event. Well, that's for somebody else.
Right.
That's not for me.
Yes.
I don't have the right clothes.
That's right. Or whatever the case
I'm just throwing that out there because most of the time I don't have the right clothes.
Right. I know exactly how you feel. So yeah, the events, you're working within a framework of, what the event is, but to bring these different elements to the forefront, to showcase the talents, to speak to different members of the community, I think is something that I've always strived for.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good thing in any community, man. I mean, I'd say it's timely. We need more people who think that way, you know. I don't really know what the advantage is of just clinging so tightly to rigid lines for folks. I mean, I'm not saying I've never done it either. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite. I mean, I've done it. I still do it. I mean, I wrestle with them. I think it's the wrestling with that's important maybe for all of us, is like, okay, if I've got a little ping of, if I'm feeling something where I even remotely feel like there's a me versus them, or they're over there and I'm over here, or it's a we and them, that type of thinking. Sometimes now anyway, I go, okay, let me just at least wrestle with it and analyze for a minute. Golly,
at least recognize it. I'm feeling it, and then don't go, good for you. You're feeling like you want to discriminate,
right? You know, instead going, hey man, why you feel that way?
Where did that come from?
Yeah, where did that come from? So hoorah that you're thinking along those lines, and I'm assuming that's how you probably approach when you're planning an event or trying to organize something. I mean, I'm so sure that's like a driving factor then.
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah. So like, give me an example of something in our community where I can see, or for people listening, like what's an event that you were behind or involved with where you go, this hits that note right there. This covers the grounds of your little syllabus of inclusive, diverse, entertaining, welcoming, all that.
Right. Well, and my go-to example is the work that Pat Kelty's doing with Culture Fest.
Culture Fest, yeah. We did that logo.
It's amazing. That's such an amazing event. And I believe it was 2 years ago, she had booked a concert in the amphitheater, free concert the night before Culture Fest.
Yeah.
Brought in a band from Canada, and I wish I could remember the name right off, but they were a world music band in the sense that it wasn't just one country's music or this or that.
Okay.
It was a blending. It would go from one to the other, you know, and it was all inclusive. So the audience there that night was made up of members of our community of all different nationalities and ethnicities.
Yeah.
And everyone was dancing together, just having a good time. And just for that evening, they felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
Felt more like home here.
Yeah.
Like a piece of their culture was shared.
In our community.
Right,
yeah.
right. And, you know, that's just so important to me, whether it's, you know, Culture Fest, which is, you know, unfortunately only once a year, but it is a great time to showcase some of the diversity within our Southwest Louisiana community.
Well, you know, so what you're saying, I mean, that's good to point out. I mean, you can look at events like Culture Fest, and this is, I guess, anybody listening who's maybe thinking about organizing an event or anything that's already even existing. If you're looking to tighten the screws, always maybe look to those types of other events like Culture Fest and go, definitely. Hey, what can we don't want to take, you know, they're doing their own thing, obviously, which is focused on culture, but how can we do that? How can we at least make sure that, you know, there's a variety? Because I like that too, man. I can't stand it when things sort of get homogenous, you know?
Right.
And you're going, okay, everybody's, that sounds terrible, but everybody's painting the same thing. Everybody's got the same kind of music playing, you know, it's the styles are the same. You just go,
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, it's not really difficult around here, I'll be honest. You don't have to look very hard to find all of these wonderful things. You know, and I moved away for a period of about 5 years. I lived in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And you know, which you would think, God, I'm going to come here and there's going to be so much, and there is, but the concentration of talent in Lake Charles, you know, I'd go see local bands over there, and it'd be like, God, it's so much better back home. You know, the talent in our area, whether it's artistic or musical, I've always been impressed for the size of the city that we live in, the concentration of talent. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you talk to artists, you talk to the, you know, there's such a wide variety of talent. It's really special.
Yeah, man, you're right. You know, I talked with another guest about this the other day, and we were kind of wondering, still, we feel like, even that all being said, agree with everything you said, but we still were both, he and I were both discussing how we still feel like we're, something's still not quite happening here for it to just like pour out.
Right.
Like you see in some places. And it's like, man, you're right. The talent's here. the creativity's here. There's the people are here. The interest is here. So what is it that's going to just push it over the edge to where this thing just cracks open like an ant bed? And then it's not just in one part of town. It's in that part of town.
Right.
And it's because that's what happens is like it sort of gets congested in this one little block, you know, in my opinion, you know, at least from a shotgun blast view. Is how do you get that to start happening in little pockets? And I don't know what it is. I think it's creating spaces for it to happen in other parts, you know, and I don't think we have that right now.
Yeah.
You know, there's existing spaces that I think we could use more, like even in Sulphur, you know, I mean, Sulphur's got beautiful parks now. I'd like to see us use them more for that type of thing. You know, we have festivals and things like that, but I mean, just like on the reg, you know what I mean? Something that's all welcoming,
right,
for all people, you know.
Yes.
That's tough though, because it's I don't know, it's a struggle, I think, in our communities here, you know. Well,
and I think there's a natural tendency for people to and it's totally natural and fine, in my opinion, to try to better themselves. And a lot of times we you know, me especially, I try to look at the big picture. And try to unify these elements, you know, bring everything together. I always thought, you know, a lot of people look to the east, to Lafayette, and, you know, they've got everything, everything's together there. You know, it's a perfect storm of radio and, you know, university and the culture and everything else. And I think there's a tendency for us in Southwest Louisiana to focus on that. Yes, we are Cajun, but we are also a border city, which has its own kind of unique characteristics. So I think a lot of times our Texas side, our neighbors to the west, we somewhat, you know, forget about that element of who we are. Right. So if we can, you know, rally around a common cultural identity, I think is something that we as promoters can push harder.
And I'm happy, I know it.
You've probably heard me mention filming videos, building websites, creating logos, or building brands on this podcast. Well, there's a good reason for that. I'm a brand builder, and my brand is Parker Brand Creative Services. My team and I have built countless brands in the Gulf Coast region, and a lot of our work in the travel and tourism industry is experienced across the country and honestly the whole world. We have our specialties: web, logo, package, and whole brand design, as well as video production and photography. But the reality is we function as a full-service advertising agency to businesses that don't really mesh well with larger advertising agencies or just don't want to have in-house creative departments. But don't listen to what I say. Just go to our website, parkerbrandup.com, and take a look at what we do. We're a show it, don't say it team. Okay, you should definitely say it too, but you know what I mean. That's parkerbrandup.com. We think sideways, we push forward, and we'll get your brand up.
So take this, you've earned it, a melody in chorus.
How long have you been with Banners?
Got started at the end of May, so it's very fresh.
Okay, so that's pretty fresh. And then you walked right into Rouge et Blanc kind of right after that.
That's correct. Yeah, right. That's I believe I used the word when coming in. Put my head down since then. You know, it was definitely. And you know, I was definitely worried about that event. I felt the pressure of it, the responsibility of the high quality that had come before.
Yeah, right.
And gosh, I think it just went amazingly well for. You know, for something we put together. So I'm very pleased with the way that turned out.
Did y'all kind of keep the status quo? I mean, you were new coming here. Did you kind of change? Did y'all change some things up?
A little bit here and there, yeah. You know, the general framework was very similar, but you know, we tried to add a few more elements that we thought were important. You know, we've got our cultural season coming up, and that's why we're there. You know, bringing in these performers from all over the world, and also the Engages program, which brings these performers into schools, and which is so important. I look back to when I was a kid and the kind of things that led me to that path. Yeah. You know, it is something as simple as putting a performer in a school. Yeah. And that student being exposed to something different.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know what? That kind of goes back to, and I know we didn't talk about this while we were recording, but you just hit on it. You know, we were talking about our things we have in common about some of the tragedies and losses that we've had, and how sometimes when you have those things, it's hard to keep trying to promote all these good things that are going on and like be a part of good events when you're dealing with that. But what I think we both kind of landed on was that if you can see that you've done something good for somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what you're saying right there. I mean, if you can put one entertainer or performer or whatever it may be into a school in front of one kid, the right kid on the right day, you just don't know what those little impacts have. Right. And that one kid becomes who knows, you know, and how many lives they can affect, you know.
That's right.
I think sometimes we tend to, I know we love celebrity, but then sometimes we kind of look down on it too. Like, oh, they're a celebrity. And you kind of have this, a lot of people say, oh, it's just a shallowness to celebrities. And that may be true. But some people really do use their celebrity
certainly
to help. I mean, like, do good things because they've got influence and they've got money and they're aware that that's what's going on and they're not just trying to get rich, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So the transition from being a part of a team at Arts and Humanities, Arts Council, and then going into sort of you're in a leadership position. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm currently the assistant director. So our director is Brooke Hanneman. She's from the New Orleans area and has primarily a theater background. She's amazing. She's worked with the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival, Orlando Fringe Fest. So, God, you know, I really feel like we have an amazing team. Jessica Hart is our outreach specialist. And, you know, she's primarily involved with the student aspect. It's just such a great complementary set of skills that is at the table. So
that's good, man.
I really look forward to that work that's coming from that team. So
what you said y'all? So what do y'all have coming up? What's going on next with banners?
The cultural season. That's our in March and April. Every March and April we do that. You know, like I said, we bring in performers from all over the world. So we haven't announced that list yet.
Yeah.
I put out a couple of teasers. We're bringing in this band from Scotland called the Red Hot Chili Pipers, which I think is just marketing genius right there.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
But, you know, it's kilts, it's bagpipes, it's, you know, it's the whole nine. But the, you know, huge light show dancers. I mean, it's just really this awesome stuff.
And that's your world, man. I mean, that's probably just like, oh, I love this, right?
Oh, it's exactly, that's my speed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so excited to be able to bring those kind of acts in. That's, you know, that's what I do on my spare time is, you know, seek that out and look for those cool, interesting little things. So it's exciting.
Well, so what's the difference? I mean, has that changed you? Because I mean, you went from work, you know, managing bands or booking bands, then you come into the Arts Council and you're dealing with a lot more than just music at that point.
Right.
You know, you're dealing with the whole humanities scene. How did that change you? Did it change you at all, or the way that you went about looking at things at all? You know, dealing with the diversity and creativity.
Right. I think it's not really. It remains to be seen in a way. It is still relatively new. One of the things I think about a lot is that I've always traditionally worked to promote local talent.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a bit of a shift with us bringing in talent from outside. But you know, like we did with Rouge, I think it was so important to showcase. We picked 4 artists, visual artists, to come in and paint live, which is just something I think really hits home to people instead of seeing a finished piece on the wall.
Yeah.
To see the process and what goes into it, I think gives you a different appreciation for the artist.
Do you realize what you just said, man?
What's that?
You just described yourself and me and everybody else. I mean, it's what we were talking about. To see an organization or an entity or to go to an event that's been put on in our community, that's one thing. And it's great. And you enjoy it. And you can drink your drinks and you can dance and have a good time and go home. But when you come on a show like this and you meet the people, you see the process, you know where they've been, and you go, oh, I dig that even more now.
That's right.
You know, so yeah, it's the same thing. We just we're all people, and that's who we're catering for is people to come to experience these things. And so that's really ultimately what it's all about is people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know there's a bottom line, and you can look at these things and go, well, we got to make this a fundraiser, or we got to make money. I get it. I mean, we all got to do it, but at the end of the day, what's going to drive you beyond the survival part of it has got to be something to do with people, right?
Right. Well, and it's what you're doing here with Find the Good News. It's what can I. There's so much negativity out there right now. We all know it. We see it on the news,
Sure.
whatever. But what can I do today, or what art, what performance can I put in front of someone that not only helps the artist get their work out there, but also, it's so much more of an enriching experience to put color there, to put music there. I just think that's the most important thing we can do.
You're kind of touching on some things I'm learning. And it's sad it's taken me this long. It's maybe something I've probably said, but I don't know that I've ever fully really embraced it, is an attitude of helping each other. Mm-hmm. You probably experience that all the time in your role, going people who just go, hey, I want to help and I have something to offer.
Oh, most definitely.
I mean, that's a good attitude to have, and it makes the world a better place when you have that attitude. And so you get people like that who come in, and it just probably just boosts the whole thing, right? I mean, It just fills it up with, you can feel it, I'm sure. You're going, oh man, all these resources are showing up, all these talents are getting involved. If everything could be like that, that would be awesome. But I think, again, for that to happen, you have to have an attitude of you're welcome to come. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like welcome, inclusiveness, and
right.
that we don't just want to put you in there and you just put on the uniform, right? Mm-hmm. We want to go, cool, well, we got some jobs for you to do. But what can you bring? Like, what's your color? I think Mickey Smith says, what's your sound? He's a musician. But he was saying everybody's got their own sound, and how can you add, what's your sound, and how can your sound harmonize with somebody else's sound,
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and in your job, that's kind of sort of what you're doing, right? I mean, putting things together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I want to jump into some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, of course.
I think that it's good to know, what hurts us. Yeah. But to learn how to not necessarily live there, right? I mean, because I want to do good. Yeah, I don't want to leave behind like a bunch of potholes.
Right. I think most people feel that way.
I think so too, man. I mean, I'm selfish like anybody else. I want to rest when I want to rest. I don't always get to. I want to eat what I want to eat and have air condition and like entertainment and luxury and comfort. I want all that. I want a vehicle that runs, and I don't want problems. I don't think anybody wants them, but a lot of us have them. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you can still do everything right and then still have things just go wrong, man, like repetitively. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times when we look around in our communities and we see people that are in the public eye, it's the first thing that we do these days is a lot of times we don't celebrate them, we judge them. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh, well, how'd they get that job? Or, oh, well, they don't deserve that, or who are they to say? It's just sort of a sentiment that I hear a lot more of. But you're kind of in the public eye, and you're out there putting music and art and entertainment, and it's all positive stuff. And I'm sure there's some naysayers about things. There's always going to be grumbling. I mean, and I guess I'm getting around to the long way. Even though that's what the public sees, you've got stuff too that you have to deal with and overcome, and that's going on. And so in your job, as somebody who's out there to put positivity out there and put good entertainment out there, how do you balance that when you have tragedies or hard things in your life? Like where have you been, and then how have you kind of pulled yourself back?
Right. The full answer would be great. I'd love to have that written out and have a guideline, a plan of action like we do for events. Yeah. But you really just try to do the best you can. And with me, I tend to put it into the work. Instead of focusing on those tragedies or whatever. I try to offset it. Yeah. And we talked briefly about, every day of your working career, you can you can get bogged down in the red tape or the bureaucracy or, the negativity, which I think a lot of times comes from just a difference in philosophy of how things should be done. But the one thing that really always I try to keep my eye on when going through that is those moments, those special moments that give you that fuel when things just really come together, or you see in someone that, gosh, they were really affected by this. Whatever the case, there's a laundry list of things, but those things don't happen every day. You have to fight for them a little bit.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of something like that you can think of where you go, oh, I remember this. This was one of these moments where I went, I don't know. I call them moments where you're almost outside of yourself and you just get real clear and you go, I see right now like everything come together and this is what it's all about. Like, have you had moments like that where you can just say, oh, I know, I remember this?
Oh, definitely. We talked about some of the events, this past spring art walk. You see when those things come together and you see these people rally around, an artist or a performer that maybe you didn't know about before. Those are the great moments. I keep a folder in my email box of all I just call it keepers. And when I'm feeling a little down or, something's really gone wrong, you go to that folder and it's just all these, the people who take the time to say, wow, this really affected me, or this is amazing,
really?
Work. You just save those and read through them, and it reminds me of why I'm doing this. Why you go through all the hardship. So, that may be something I think a lot of people could utilize. I know I reference that thing quite often.
Yeah, that's actually a really good tip. I mean, in fact, you can look behind me. There's a couple of notes up on my whiteboard. I don't get them very often, but, that means the world to people who are doing things especially, the community that affect a lot of people in a community, or even just a lot of people in a business. I don't know, maybe even just one-on-one, but when somebody stops and lets you know and gives you, especially when they give you details,
right?
That to me is when it's like, oh my gosh, that encounter, that conversation for you on your end of it. For me, I guess it might mean like, oh, well, I'm just spending some time with somebody. I'm just listening to them. Mm-hmm. And in my perspective, it might just be that's all I felt like I did was just listen to their story. And then you get a note that tells you the conversation or the time. It mattered, and you go, whoa, for me, I thought I was just listening, but to this other individual, it was a conversation, and you realize that that's what it is. They just want to know. People want to know that they matter, man.
Yeah.
And so on the flip, when you get a letter from somebody like that tells you that, it's like, oh man, I don't know, it just cracks your heart open, yeah.
Right. And it's also a reminder to try to make sure you return that, you pay it forward,
Yeah.
I definitely try to make sure I do that, and those emails are a reminder of how special it is. And sometimes you don't even realize that you've affected someone. So just being cognizant of that, being aware that people are affected by your actions, and to make sure and show gratitude for when they do that for you. So
yeah, I mean, I think we have to be on guard a little bit. I mean, it's just, for me, I call it wrestling with myself, and a lot of times it's wrestling with my words, wrestling with my thoughts, but it's having a little more mindfulness and awareness of what we're saying. I mean, I think we could use a dose of that in just about every form of communication.
Most definitely.
Our emails, our social posts, sitting across the table from another human being, so much of it's so fast. I think we can be short and crass and not even realize that we're disregarding another person. I'll say this, I mean, look, there's a lot of thought about out there in the world that's just like, man, whatever with that. We ain't got time for that. If you got to sit there and coddle and be kind to everybody, then we never get anything done. Somebody's got to come in there and get it done, and we ain't got time to be nice to people. And there are people, man, I mean, I meet them that are just like, that's it. That's the philosophy. And I'm kind of like in my point in my life where I'm the opposite, you know, I'm trying to be the opposite. It's like, look, man, I want to regard people. I want to watch what I'm saying. And I'm not talking about being politically correct. I mean, I want to tell the truth, and I want to be able to give you who I am. Like we were talking about Tom earlier. I want to be Oran, man. I don't want to be something that I've made up,
right?
You know, and then I just become an email or a resource that you can email, and then I'm gonna do something. I want you to go, no, there's still a human being over there, and I want you to have that person, right? But I don't have to do it in a way that's hurtful, you know, or crude or whatever. I don't know. I think there's just a softer touch, maybe what we all need a little bit of, you know.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
You know, and you know, it is tough though, man. I mean, I guess in your position too, you know, when you're trying to coordinate resources, not everybody has that same philosophy. So I think sometimes that's where the conflicts maybe arise, you know, because it's like, well, if you're trying to deal with things with a lighter touch and a more understanding touch, and maybe 50% of what you're dealing with, the other people reciprocate, but then the other 50 is like that they're not living by that worldview. You know, I always, years ago, I would think, well, I'm going to be kind, but I'm always going to keep being an ass in my back pocket, just in case kindness doesn't work.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, certainly.
And so I did that for a long time. It was like I had a hammer hidden behind my back, and I didn't want to have to use that, but it was like, well, I mean, I can and use it well if I have to. And I was kind of almost proud of it. Does that make sense? Like I was like, yeah, I'm nice, pat myself on the back, but I can be a real jerk when I have to. And then as I really, now me even saying that out loud, I go, gross, man. I don't want to be proud of that.
Right.
I really don't, man. That's just ridiculous. I was like, so what I would expect from the other party if I was having an encounter would be like, well, I'm going to be kind to them, and then I'm going to give them a chance to be kind back. And I'm going to do this a few times. But if they don't, here comes a hammer.
It's a little exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah. And so what I learned, what I'm starting to realize is that I'm just basically giving up and adopting their worldview because I'm dealing with a hammer. And so I'm going, well, if you're going to be a hammer, then I'm going to pull out my hammer, and we're going to both be hammers, and we're going to beat each other to death.
Right.
And nothing gets done. And I was like, well, so they're winning that. And not even they. The idea of hardness is just winning if I give up every time. So why not? What if I found strength in just dropping the hammer?
Right.
What if I found strength in just pushing on through and going, okay, I'm dealing with a hammer, but I'm going to just continue to deal with this with kindness. Well, that's not easy, man.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only way things are going to be better.
Well, and you hit on it a little earlier too, just an awareness that person is going through their own problems and issues. So, and it's easy to forget that in a lot of ways. We're all guilty. But, just keeping that in mind, I think knowing that they could feel, just as bad as you at your worst moments.
Right.
And trying to make that, it's definitely a game. It's definitely a, how do I, reach these people. So,
it's funny, man. Like, I don't know. We can get, I think we're proud of being hard sometimes, and it's funny, and it's like all that kind of internet talk is like funny to say mean stuff. It becomes real funny. Who can say, that's why people go read the comments on YouTube, man. They'll not even finish a video before they're reading them.
Right.
And it's like, oh man, I can't believe they said that. And it's just, how mean can we be?
It's a slippery slope.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah. How mean can I be? And then so I thought, man, how good can I be? How nice can I be? What happens when I start doing that? Be nicer. Just because, man, and see just what happens. I don't know. Just you were talking about that a second ago about seeing others and going, they may be going through something. I think it just takes a little energy to do that.
That's right.
You just got to put a little effort into that. Like when I lost my dad, and I'm sure the people who listen to this podcast eventually, I hope they don't ever get sick of hearing about it, because when I bring it up, it's not because I'm trying to, I guess it is, because honestly, it's important. I think the world maybe tells you, truck on, man.
That's right.
Pick up the pieces, shut up about it, move on. I'll give you an example. A few years back, this woman we know lost her son to suicide. we were friends on Facebook. I mean, really, that was about the only interaction I had with her. And she was grieving online. And that grief was very public. Mm-hmm. And I would follow. It was painful to watch. I hadn't lost my father at that time, but it was just painful to watch her grieve online. She was using it as like a journal, mm-hmm. and therapy, you know, or whatever we use online for. Everybody use it, social media for. Everybody uses it differently, but it was a way to like someone hear my pain, someone just to get it out, dude.
Right.
Because there's really not a lot of good, healthy places for that to go, and when you're in it, you don't know where to put it. Nobody understands. Right. You don't feel like anybody really understands, you know. And it's hard to explain. And so I was watching that, and how quickly people turned on her. Man, I blew my mind. I was like, yeah, she's being honest, and she's posting a lot, mm-hmm. daily, 3-4 times a day. But I was like, she's wailing, man, like she's hurting.
To cry for help.
Cry for help. Somebody know my pain with me. And I don't know. I really don't know any more than just the little I do, I guess. But what I saw happen online was everybody just turned eventually. After a month or two, people started giving her advice and telling her she needs to not do that and not grieve online like that. And they're tired of hearing it. And I was like, man, 3 months? Is that all we get?
Right.
You know? So that was kind of a big eye-opener for me. And it's partly why I got off of social media shortly after my father died, because I was using social media to grieve. Mm-hmm. Right after I lost him, I was writing these sort of tributes to my father, you know, over and over. And I found some strange satisfaction when people would go in there and like it and share it or comment on it. And I know in analyzing it, it was like, I'm not gonna lie, it made me feel good. It would be like, oh, you saw that I'm hurting. You see how I feel about this person I care about. And so I kind of, having watched this other person, I thought, I'm heading there. Mm-hmm. And if I'm heading there, if I don't watch it, I'm also heading to this place where people will turn on me.
Right.
Because the world doesn't tolerate a long griever.
That's right.
The world says, get over it, get on with life, quit griping, quit complaining. Everybody dies sometime.
Happy face.
Yeah, get back to work, shut up, fit in. And I was like, I don't know, man. That I still struggle with it because I don't agree with it. You know, I think that's part of the clock that we've kind of all made, that's got things a little jacked up because we don't have time for humanity and human hearts, man.
That's right.
I get time for that. There's business work to be done, man. There's business, there's money, there's you know, there's widgets to make, and you know, got stuff to do.
Right.
And I got shows to watch. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And but at the same time, I still got up and got back in it. And you know, I don't know. I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but I think it might help somebody out there just to hear how you've maybe dealt with some of that after losing your brother.
Yeah. In October of last year, I did lose my brother. He's my older brother, 6 years. And it you know, aside from the, it's a complex issue for me, you know, and we won't get into all the ins and outs of that, but you know, he was away for a very long time. We were very close growing up. And he worked overseas for many years, so I probably saw him a handful of times within the past, you know, 20, 30 years. So there's a lot of complexity to what happened. But I think, again, what I did was to channel that into the positivity of work. And I can't say that that's the best way to deal. You know, it may be just turning away from it. I'm not sure, but you know, again, when you have those moments that, you know, your work was reached someone, mm-hmm. You know, it's maybe a little more powerful than a like, I think. Yeah. So it would carry me forward, to know that, you know, that I could help out in that regard. Yeah, that's a tough one. It really is, especially in an industry where, you know, we are, as promoters, you know, as event coordinators, we we tend to focus on the happy side. You want everyone to have a good time and to, come out and see these beautiful pieces of art or whatever, but I think in a lot of ways too, it's easy to forget that art comes from somewhere. Yeah. That artist is channeling their own issues, their own, so everybody deals with it in their own way and in what they can. I have seen a lot more on Facebook, with all the tragedy in the world, I see more and more people struggling. And we talk about, after a major tragedy, we talk about mental health and, supporting people that have issues. But yet, I'm like you, I don't see that happening on social media. I see people who are hurting and basically ignored. And, I just try in my own way to try to connect to that person in a meaningful way that may be more than just a like or something. I definitely don't want to, call anyone out. But we're all, I think the takeaway is we're all dealing with our own lives, aside from our careers. So we have to find our own way to deal with it and connect. I think we talked about, early on, connection being kind of the basis for what we do. Yeah. Everyone, no matter what you do, you're really trying to connect to other human beings. And, we're all in this together. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, I think it's a communication thing. I mean, when you're performing or you're providing, like what you do, you're not up on stage performing, right? But you're still organizing it and you're behind it and you're kind of pushing towards that performance. So that performer is ultimately in front of these people because of work that you've done. So you're kind of a part of a long form of communication.
Oh gosh, when I think about, this is something I think about occasionally and it bowls me over. Having been involved in putting together events since I was 20 years old, I'm 41 now. Sometimes I sit back and think about all the relationships or, even marriages and children and just life-changing type events that have happened around these events. And like I said, it really, it's a crazy feeling. And then I can point to specific examples, going way back of this happening. And gosh, what if that, good or bad, if that wasn't there, this may not have happened. So it's not about tooting your own horn. It's just like, really looking at what we do affects people. It enriches their lives in a very meaningful way. While I am working towards connecting with other people, I am also connecting other people. So that's, I think, just a very important aspect of what we do.
Yeah, you're talking my language right there, man. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to sit around and contemplate is the all of the things that had to happen to get to any one point, and how any of that, if one person wasn't there, I think we can get a herd mentality and go, we need to all move together, all in the same tempo, all at the same pace. And maybe when you take I'll call it a God view of things, and you look at things, you can see like maybe the things moving in waves, and patterns. But down on the ground, it doesn't look that way, and you can think, if you look at that from, I guess, that God view and that herd view, it's like, well, we can just pluck this one person out of there and it doesn't really matter. They're all going to kind of make their way there anyway. But on an individual basis, and maybe in a community basis or a country or whatever, you pull particular people out of situations and it changes everything.
Yeah, the old butterfly flaps its wings theory.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can really look at you. I mean, look at just the moves you've made and all the things that have happened to you. I mean, 20 years from now, somebody sits down and talks to you. There's no telling where that story is going, and then, the effect. I don't know, a guest on here the other day was talking about playing music in a mall like 15 or 20 years ago, and this little kid, was like, wanted his autograph or something, and he was like, I thought it was weird because he's like, I'm just kind of a kid too, I'm playing. And then 15 or 20 years later, he was somewhere completely nowhere near where he had played that at. I mean, way off somewhere, and was in some shop and heard somebody playing music and was like, man, that's really good,
Mm-hmm.
And he went back there to listen to him. He's like, man, I gotta tell you, that's really good. And the guy's like, oh, you don't remember me? And he's like, no. And he told him, he said, I saw you playing, at the mall. And he's like, it just motivated me, and this guy now plays music with him on stage,
Oh, wow.
And he said, you just don't freaking know, man.
Mm-hmm.
How that one little thing's going to change things.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I'm always curious what drives people, and what makes them better people. And I know you love music.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have like go-to things that you listen to for different times in your life, or like when you really need to, when you want to feel good, or when you want to like maybe settle into an emotion or something? I mean, are you that kind of guy where you like, I want to go rest in this album? And do you find yourself gravitating towards things that you go, man, I do this all the time, this is like a tool for me?
Right. Now, that's a great question. Not really. My tastes tend to, they'll shift big time.
Yeah.
One day I mean, maybe on the ride over, I could point to, the different types of music that I listened to. It was from, RZA to Mississippi John Hurt. I mean, it's just, I just connect with realness, I think. So, the answer to that question is no, not really. I don't have a go-to. I do, I do find myself listening, seeking out new things, and I think that drives me more than anything. Seeking out finding something, that one song that really grabs you for maybe a week or something, because it just speaks to you. It says, what you're feeling at that moment. Again, back to connectedness, So, no, not really. No, there's not a go-to. And I can point to life events, or those albums that you hear and you're like, oh gosh, that reminds me so much of this period of time, and that got me through this, or whatever the case. But long running, I mean, I have favorite bands that I've stuck with, over the years and such, but no, not really. No.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, man. I mean, that's actually awesome, because it does fit with the job you have, and then the way you've lived your life too. I mean, always looking for something new. You're just experiencing it at that moment, and whatever resonates with you at that time.
That's right.
I guess my musical tastes are like that too. My son laughs because when he gets in my vehicle and one of my primary playlists is playing, he's like, man, you never know what you're going to hear in here. Nobody could listen to it for 5 minutes or 20 minutes and go, oh, he likes this kind of music. Because I just have never been that kind of, I'm all over the spectrum, man. Just
there's something kind of interesting though about my love for Cajun and Zydeco music now. Growing up, you probably had the same experience. A lot of people probably had the same experience as kids in our generation. And it's the same as it ever was. We look at that as maybe when we were younger as our parents' music, and it didn't speak to us. And gosh, it's just always there. Anytime you go to contraband days or whatever,
somebody's got this Cajun and Zydeco band. Yeah.
It really took me leaving the area to appreciate a lot of those things. And gosh, I remember Mardi Gras in Georgia. It was like, this is just another day. It really gave me an appreciation for our area and how unique it was. And I saw some Cajun bands, and saw them in a different light in a venue where young people were dancing, and it was really speaking to them. And it really led me in that direction to totally change my view of what Cajun and Zydeco music, what our culture in general is.
Yeah.
So, it's... by no means do I encourage people to leave the area. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think it's so important in so many ways to get outside of your comfort zone in a lot of ways, to see your home in a different perspective, and that was very formative for me as well.
That's good advice. I can say honestly, I've had a similar relationship with Cajun Zydeco music, and I perceived it probably exactly the way that you did. I always, it was something that maybe the older people in my family listened to, but I didn't listen to. And when I heard it, I guess that was how I almost, and I don't want to say rejected it, but I just sort of went, eh. Mm-hmm. And this is going to sound really terrible, but I kind of had an attitude of, I've heard it.
Right.
I mean, it's the truth. And I mean, I'd rather just tell the truth. But I mean, that's changed from filming events. I get exposed to a lot of it. And it's like you said, I mean, you're not going to miss it. It's always at the event. There's going to always be a Cajun or Zydeco band. And so I filmed a lot of that and got tons of footage of that. And so I get to, when I'm editing, I tend to hear it a lot, and it grew on me. I kind of come to the point where it's a comfort that it's there, if that makes any sense.
Most definitely.
You know, because you can get in there and it's like a new band lineup, like Live at the Lakefront. I mean, you know, there's a lot of cool bands that come through, but there's always a Cajun Zydeco band there, you know, at some point on one of the weekends. And you know, it does bring a different crowd, though.
It does,
you know. Yeah. But, I mean, you know, the other thing is with those types of bands, I think you nailed that too. The beauty of that is you're going to see people, a different type of intimacy with people. They're going to get up and dance, and there's a little more, they're smiling, and it just looks like a good time, man. So I think we're still getting used to the fact that we have more stuff going on now. Does that make sense? Like, we're still, as a community, trying to, like, pull everybody into this, hey, there's fun stuff to do, there's things going on, settle into it, it's a stick around, you know.
Well, and one side effect of having been involved in this, you know, industry in some form or another for many years, I think, is to see that bigger picture, and that some things are in a development stage, and that's critical. You know, the side effect of having a place like Pourquoi Pas or an all ages venue is not every band up there is going to be incredible. They're not going to be, you know, but to give young people a stage or a venue, whether you're an artist, to put them out there, and it's all about, well, okay, well, how do people respond to this? And I think the really, I don't want to say smart, but, you know, the people who, there's a balance between commerce and art that we both know very intimately. But what do people respond to, and how can I fit my art into that in a way that I'm still comfortable with? I think development is absolutely crucial. That's why we had so many great bands for so many years, you know, and it continues today, is that we did have those stages for young people to kind of cut their teeth on, you know what I mean? And that's what a lot of the events are. You know, I kind of really viewed that as my primary role at the Arts Council, is a role of development. You know, and I ran into a lot of kickback from that. There are a lot of people in the community who believe that art is this, that art fits into this box. And I do not agree with that whatsoever. I think you have to provide that avenue for people to showcase their work and to also see how people react to it, so that it does get better. And better not in a, you know, it's better is a bad word. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you mean, though, by better, that they have an opportunity to show their art, and that they can continue to go down that path and more blossom as artists and become what kind of artists they're going to become.
That's right. And we're all hopefully we're all in a development stage perpetually. Yeah. You know, I mean, if I'm not learning from something I'm doing, then I feel like I didn't do it right already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There has to be something taken away from every project. So yeah, that's definitely how I viewed my role over there, and I think it's absolutely critical.
Do we have, I mean, and this, forgive me my ignorance, but are there venues for young people to perform right now in our community, or is that kind of lacking?
Not as much. And, you know, that's, I think that's some ways that's because of the trends in music. You know, there's just not as much emphasis on, the kind of music that we, grew up with.
I got you.
It's a DJ kind of setup, and which is great. I mean, every generation rebels and does their own thing. They do. We were just talking about with Cajun and Zydeco. It's the same exact thing. So yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is. What I would love to see is another kid that was like us, that decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a building. I mean, that's just what we did. We, instead of sitting around and being bored and complaining about it, we found a building. We rented it. We put our own money in. We, as a team, collectively made this happen. We're not just going to sit back and be bored and complain about it, and I think the ripple effect on that still continues. I see it all over. A lot of those same faces that were at these early shows are either artists or they're working in some sort of creative outlet now. So those are, and it's not just me. It's a formative experience,
That's really awesome to hear, man. Because I think somebody even posted that online. They had a photograph of one of the local events recently, and they pointed out several of the people involved, and they were all people that were involved or in the early days of Pourquoi Pas. Mm-hmm. So for people listening, because there's people anywhere could listen to this, there's going to be locals, but everywhere. What does Pourquoi Pas mean?
It's why not in French. Okay. Why not, which perfectly sums that up, that whole time period.
So back then, okay, so y'all, God, well, we're really making full circle. I know we started talking about that, but when that was out, what was the blowback from the community, if any?
That's a good one. It was not readily accepted, and the building itself was really only open for a summer of '95, but for several years before that, shows were held all over the community. We
gotcha. Okay.
Under the I-10 bridge there where Isle of Capri was an old, it was like Lions Club or something, and that was just one of the venues. So they really did that all themselves, and it was a functioning 501c3 nonprofit. It was an amazing accomplishment for a group of kids who came together democratically and decided.
Yeah, so you're talking, how old is everybody that's in the 19, 18, kids, 17?
Yeah, these are high school kids. And this was probably, I was a junior. This was something I witnessed. That I kind of came into and really informed where I've gone since then. And there's a great, a buddy of mine from back in those days sent me a link recently. That really was just awesome to see. There was a band that would play pretty regularly, and in this whole underground scene, they have a good name. They still tour. Braid from Chicago. A lot of people remember that if you were there. But they were doing an interview with Filter Magazine, which is nationwide, and the interviewer asked, "What, out of all these years you've been playing, what is your favorite place to play?" And this guy, no kidding, said Lake Charles, Louisiana. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now because it's just, it was the difference between just putting somebody on a stage and here, this is that. That was a community that went the extra mile for them, for the artists that were coming in. They were appreciative.
Yeah, they were loved.
They really, we'd take them out to Indian Village and, to the sandbars and, just show them the area and have a great time, and I think that that stuck with them. So after, 20 years of being in a band, that's what he said. It was amazing.
Well, that tells you right there, man, intimacy, that proper level of love from the people and the crowd, that's just, you can't replace it. The buildings may not have been the best, and the support from the like people are getting now in the community. There was no Chuck Fest to play at,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Which is a cool event, but I'm just saying, that didn't exist, but that's the love they felt, man, and the community was still resonated all those years later. So this is a bunch of kids. You form this, and so it goes around different buildings or different locations, right? And so would that be planned or just kind of pop up, or how did that work?
It was a whole infrastructure. They had a mailing list, and we would get mail outs with the full calendars, and we had membership cards. You had to pay a due. I think it was something like $10 or something for the whole entire year, and you had to have that to get into those shows.
I think my wife said she may have her somewhere in some old box.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I see them still. People post them. They'll find them and be like, "Look, it's my Pourquoi Pas
That's
card." You know,
crazy.
it's something that people really that community, and it's that. Gosh, that's something I'm chasing now. You know, I definitely don't want to delve into that too far, but I do feel a certain amount of cliquishness in our community
or existing
right now. Yes. And that's, it really just hurts my heart in a way.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I suspect you're right, because I am a suspicious person by nature. So it tends to make me wait a little bit before I just go, that sounds cool, I'm in.
Right.
You know? And and I don't know if I would have articulated it that way, but yeah, there's something happening that potentially could drive away or keep something like Pourquoi Pas' authenticity from happening. There's a little bit more contrived.
Right.
I don't know what I'm even trying to say, but I'm just outsider looking in. I sense it already.
Yeah.
And it worries me too, because then you don't want to do that, because then people who are going to try to come into the community and go, hey, I'm creative, I want to do creative things, I want to throw my creativity in the mix. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're not really a part of the gang. It comes out of a place where we want to do something different, and all are welcome, but then the all are welcome begins to, the circles get smaller and smaller, and then it becomes its own little thing. Yeah,
right.
It's weird, man. It's natural if it happens.
Right, and I don't want to take myself outside of that either. You know, I've actually heard that a time or two in the past that someone may have felt that way about something that I hold so dearly.
Yeah.
So, you know, being aware of not feeling that way and trying to be as welcoming as possible is something that I've always done. And that's why I had such a hard time with the whole, you know, putting art in a box and this is valid. And the validity argument it holds no water for me. You know, I think any kind of creative expression on any level is important, and there should be a venue for it.
Yeah.
We should be encouraging people to express themselves instead of bottling it up. And, you know, you're talking about dealing with tragedies and your own personal issues. That is a way out, is to express ourselves, to connect. And it may not be everybody's way, but I think it's a very important way for a lot of people. So
yeah, well, there may have even been people in those early days in the 90s when that was going on with Pourquoi Pas. There's no telling how many people that might have been going on.
Right.
You know, there may have been trouble at home, or there may have just been a tragedy, or there may have been a pain, and it's their creativity or eagerness to express themselves through those venues and be involved in that community came from that. You'd never know unless you had a one-on-one with somebody.
Right.
You know, so we just don't know. I mean, you're right. I think creativity creativity is, we were talking about that before we started rolling, about those forces, you know, and creativity is on my list of one of those forces. I've always called it the creative principle, and I believe it exists like an energy. I really do. I don't think it's new. I think it's ancient, and I think that it is an energy of arising. It's an energy of formation, and it finds a way to manifest in beauty and art and creatures. I mean, I look around and I see it everywhere, just unfolding and making and like repurposing and beautifying. And I mean, in a way, when we have a creative community like what you deal with, in any community, anywhere, but especially here right now, that's what's happening. In my, you know, drippy sort of philosophical worldview of that, I see it unfolding, you know. And then, and on another note, when you can see like perhaps even like cliques and things like that forming, to me, that's another type of energy that also exists, right? But it tries to create and solidify. and make solid, right? But creativity doesn't want that.
Right.
You know, so those things are like eddies in the water, man. They just swirl away, and creativity finds a way, you know.
Certainly.
So no, in a way, if you look at the long view of that, and I think it's beautiful that you can see that when you can see the Pourquoi Pas seeds have that creativity's unfolded, you know. And this goes back to my original question, which we really didn't get to the answer to, which I'm really curious about. You know, back then, the community may have, because I'm gonna tell you, like I told you, I was a little older, so I was like, Pourquoi Pas, what's that? I ain't doing that.
Right.
I just drive by the downtown. I was like, what are they doing putting the thing over there? And I wasn't like, but it was nothing malicious. It was just like a disregard.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
Which is terrible attitude to have. I hope I don't have it now, but, and I probably do. And I'm sickens me to even think about all the things I disregard and just go, I ain't interested in that. But, as a community, the whole and the perception, you know, the community saw it one way, but now in all this time, that creativity flows out, and now you're able to look at all these wonderful things that everyone's celebrating in this community that had come from this thing that maybe the community itself as a collective looked at and went, ugh, yeah, we don't want that.
Well, and it may have fed each other. You know, if we're going to be totally honest with ourselves, you know, these were kids with mohawks and purple hair and you know, spikes and chains and all this kind of stuff. It was definitely a different time. Yeah. And a lot of that is a lot more accepted now. Sure. But also on the other token, a lot of us may have worn that as a badge to a degree. Yeah, we all do it. Right. So, but yeah, the response to that being downtown was, you know, I definitely don't want to go into the negative too much, but we did get a kickback, and that's why it did last such a short period of time. It was not accepted, and again, that was a hugely formative moment for me. You know, this. I'll tell you a little story. We were out there one time, and this, you know, was, I don't know if I should tell this story. No, tell it, Nick. If you can tell it, and if we get done, if you feel like you don't want it, we'll edit it. But we'll let you just tell me how you feel. Go for it. What, you know, and these were kids, and this was I should say too that this was a no alcohol club. Okay. No alcohol was allowed. This was, you know, for all ages. So teens could go. Yeah. Was there a too young? No, I remember young kids like being 11, there with 12. Their parents. Oh, okay, cool. So you had some supportive parents. It was very welcoming. Okay. But, you know, we did look a little different. And again, that was at a time when it wasn't as accepted. Sure. But, yeah, we were outside, and I remember a van pulling up and the doors flying open, and you know, SWAT gear jumps out. I've heard people talk about this. Throws us against a wall. And I mean, you know, there was a lot of things that happened over there that tried to stifle what we were doing. And again, maybe that's just the nature of, that's how it was supposed to work out, you know, and there is always a backlash against creativity, which in turn makes you that much more driven. Well, dude, I mean, you're talking, if I'm thinking about this right, this is skateboarding is not a crime era. Right. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no X Games at this time, and everybody's like, Tony Hawk, he's got a brand, you know, this is like, all that was just not, I mean, God, how many everywhere? Don't skate here, don't skate there, running. I remember, man. I mean, totally even different 90s, early 90s on through the, I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a different time. I remember we'd, you know, walk down the street and people would yell at us out of cars or throw stuff at us. Oh, you know? Yeah. I mean, it was actually like, you know, but who's to say that's not kind of what the kind of people we were at the time, you know, it's just like, you know, it was that pushback. You probably even took some of that as like, yeah, well, I don't, it's kind of an almost secretly like proud of that. Right. Like I said, like, wearing cool, it as a badge, you know, but you know, I think at its heart, whatever happened, however it went down, like I said, I think the most important thing is the ripple effect and how formative that was for so many people to have that community. And it may have been so much more necessary than a lot of us even realize. Like you said, no telling what some of those kids were going through. Sure. And that was their escape, to go there with their community, to have a good time, to connect.
We talk about that a lot on the show, and it might just be because of me, because I think about it a lot. Actually, it's one of my favorite books up on that shelf is called Tribes. And, I think that that's a human inclination, is to cluster up in tribes. And tribalism can be good because it, I'll tell you, like, the way I look at it is we went through like what's the word? I don't want to get all into somebody else's business. But we had a tragedy in our family about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And at that time, I was in a particular tribe. Okay? That's the best way to put it. And when that tragedy occurred, that tribe came together. And the way I described it was there was a wound that was bleeding, and everybody in the tribe came and put their hands on it and held it together while we got the care we needed, right? And that was the best analogy I could put, is like put pressure on it. Okay, you got a wound, put pressure on it. Well, everybody came together to put pressure on it because people in my family didn't have the strength to put pressure on it, and we needed the tribe. Now, that's the good side of a tribe, and that's probably focusing on the good and not talking about the negative sides of tribalism. That's probably what you guys are experiencing there in some degree.
Most
right?
definitely.
A lot of those kids had stuff going on, man.
And that was what they needed to get through. So.
Yeah. I find a lot of young people, man, they just, even just having a teenager. I've had 2 teenagers. And, hearing about what goes on with teenagers and know what my own teenagers go through, and knowing that Pourquoi Pas was teenagers, teenagers are hurting out there, man. And I mean, today they've been hurting a lot forever. There's just some different set of problems each time, but I think that's changing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's getting polarized. I'm not so sure, but I think that I see a lot more parents who are going, I remember when I was a teenager. A lot of them don't, man. I mean, they come from a generation where the parents are like, you need to just stuff that stuff down and deal with it, and don't realize their kids are hurting out there.
Right. I can't even pretend to know what it's like to grow up in this age.
Oh,
we
man.
have no clue. I mean,
No.
we don't understand.
No, just being an adult, this is territory I didn't really think you and I were going to get into, but I mean, we deal with it, right? I mean, and that's part of what this show came from. Yeah. I mean, it came from a retooling of the information stream, because I met my wife, right, in 2004. In 2004, MySpace was sort of new. And so I'd never heard of it. I kind of got on it, used it for a little while, got off. Facebook comes along, Twitter, and I was like an early adopter, because at that point my advertising career was kind of in this area, if I can even call it a career. I don't know if that's what you call it. My falling into different advertising, one to the other, trying to survive like everybody else. Social media became a thing pretty quickly, but I was an early adopter, and I didn't think anything of it at that time. I thought, this is cool. It's connecting people, and it's a way to share information, and it's so different than the internet. And that was cool at first, but I saw it get dark pretty quick, man. I mean, like, it turned into a hole of just so many negative things, and I couldn't control the feed. And then I had some negative things happen in my life, and it just became an amplifier,
right,
for all of that. And then now in the world, I think that's what I'm seeing as well, is like, it's an amplifier, especially which used to be my favorite platform was Twitter. And Twitter has become a loudspeaker now for a lot of people who just, I think everybody should have an opportunity to communicate, but I just hate it when I see so much venomous stuff coming out in the world. But that all being said, that kind of gets me. My point was, my wife and I were talking, and I said, imagine if we had met and social media had been around for 10 years. I'm not so sure we would have had the relationship. We wouldn't have possibly even became friends. Because the way we got to know each other had nothing to do with that. I mean, there was text, and we did text, but it wasn't. But our phones were, flip phones. So texting was even still short and sweet. It wasn't like long messages and stuff. It was more, the tool was there to connect you with the person so you could meet up, right? I mean, like a pager.
Right.
So technology, used to be phone, used to talk to each other, have conversations, and then we went from, hey, I got a pager so I can then still connect with you to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Then it turned into texting again to connect so we can have a conversation, but those layers just kept disappearing. Mm-hmm. And I told her, I said, if we had those tools, we wouldn't have gotten to know each other. And that's how we got close.
Right.
Was one-on-one, going to sit down and talk over a drink, visiting, just sitting and talking. I mean, that was it. We just talked and we talked and we talked. I think now I cannot imagine, like Tinder and all these other things that people are doing, I'm going, they're natural too. Mm-hmm. It's not even like I shouldn't I? Oh, that's just what it goes. That's the way it is.
That's the way it is, yeah.
And I'm like, man, how is that changing our relationships with each other and the way we get to know each other, and honestly, the way we disregard each other quicker. And we go, okay, that's just whatever. I'm not interested. I've got to. I know them,
right?
I know them, and that's kind of what I'm guilty too. Like you, I've talked to you, but have I ever sat down at a table across from you and talked like today?
Right.
And so that's, if I could encourage anything on this show, that would be what I would encourage, is more of that. Not just hanging out with buddies, but like really going and sitting and talking with people, man, and just ask hard questions. People are more loving than we think they are, I think.
I totally agree with that too. And it's easy to forget too. A lot of times I worry about asking the questions or saying that, heartfelt type, sentiment, because there is that disconnectedness, there's, you worry about the perception, of course. And,
sure.
It's definitely different. It's tough. I mean, and you put it in the perspective of the work we do. Gosh, I remember, talking about technology. We were hanging up flyers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And now it's like, oh, you boost your post for $20 or whatever, and, and it is helpful and, all that kind of stuff, but it's a totally different world, and I going back to, growing up in this kind of technology age, I just can't fathom.
No, I totally agree. I think that might be the maybe the allure for me of these types of shows is that, because and maybe it's why it's becoming more popular. I mean, it's a medium that's blowing up, and I think that's what it is. People are getting behind the scenes. One of my buddies the other day texted me, and he said, "Hey, I've been listening to the show," and he said, "Man, I feel like after I listen to these, I know these people, and they feel like they're my friends, and I've never met them." And I was like, "Well, that's good,
right?
Because I've had a few people on here that I've never met until they came on here, and so." To me, that is a beautiful thing, to meet a new person and it's kind of the way I feel about what you're saying about your events and things that you're involved with. People need to know that it's freaking safe, man, for them to come in as they are and enjoy whatever's being presented to them safely, and then to be able to just let go and be who they are without having to put on a show.
Right.
Things just become more beautiful that way.
It's incredibly refreshing. In a lot of ways, sitting down and going over ideas and that aspect of the work is I'm always drawn to. I do some writing on the side for freelance type work, primarily with bands, interviewing, that kind of thing. But that is also my favorite part, is to sit down and talk to someone about their passion, and it really breaks down some walls that you don't have that kind of experience on social media typically, or it's such light fare, you know what I mean? That it is crucial to see how someone else lives and thinks, and to gain an appreciation for the path they're walking.
For the events that you're involved with now, and this gets into social media, how are y'all communicating that to the public? Is it through traditional means of advertising, or are y'all using social media as your prime driver? I mean, what are y'all? I mean, I'm sure y'all are using a lot of traditional forms, but like billboard, radio, TV, and stuff like that. But how are y'all utilizing the new tools like social media? Does it have a voice, or is it just information? I mean, what's y'all's angle on that?
Yeah, and that's something I think about a lot. I try. I don't know if I'm successful or not, I'll be honest with you, but I do feel like, our numbers do grow and that we are on the right path. I try to put some, like what we're talking about, some personal kind of feeling, something that will attract. I see a lot of posts that are just like, it feels almost like just dumping on there. Just, this is what's going here. I'm just going to put this here. You see people say that. But it's just like anything else. I think you try to just connect with people to let them know that there is a person on the other side of that keyboard. So, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
No, you are. So are you driving the social media mostly?
Somewhat. It's definitely a team effort.
Okay.
Yeah. Just depending on what we're working on. We tend to all have different segments.
I got you.
Yeah, what we're working on, what our focus is.
And whoever's working on that focus kind of handles the communication.
Right.
Okay. I always wonder about that. I mean, it's just a curiosity. I mean, we deal with it for a lot of clients, and some we don't. But the ones we do, I can tell the difference between our own, this show, and then our own business, Parker Brand, and then a few of my other personal social media networks that I've got out there for different interests I have. Those tend to have my voice or my mind in them, and the language will sound like the way I write or talk. Mm-hmm. But when I'm managing one for somebody else, which I do, but I'm not a huge advocate of that. I think if you're going to have a brand, it's better to have a person involved, a personality. I think it's just colder, man. I mean, it's I'll put it this way. Following a page that's curated and managed by somebody that's not inside the brand, I still think you're going to get a solid information stream. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're going to know if there's a product launch, you're still going to get the product. You'll get the details. If there's an event, it's still going to come out, and you're still going to know when, where, why, how, all that. But the word social is where I get hung up. I'm like, what's social media? Mm-hmm. Because if there's not a personality on the other end, it's just media. Right. You know what I mean? It's no different than a billboard. I can't talk to the billboard, but I can still see who, where, when, why, what, how. And that's it. So it's just media. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's why I ask. I'm just curious. Everybody's different. I mean, some people just want to manage the brand because they don't want to deal with it, but they know they need to be out there.
Right.
And, that's kind of sometimes what we end up. That's the stuff we end up managing. Like I said, we still do a fine job of keeping it alive and the blood flowing, but as far as voice goes, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's tougher.
And I have my moments where, I see other people saying it, and I've said it, and I'll say it again. I'm sure if I didn't have to do this, that thing would be deleted. You know what I mean? And it's those moments when you see that kind of vitriol that comes out in social media that just, gosh, I just want to escape from this,
Yeah.
But just like anything, there's a positive side, there's a negative side, and it's just kind of balancing. Now, there are a couple of artists. You talk about connectedness, and one of your previous guests, Morgan Elaine, and Denisha Davis.
I'm trying to get her on the show. Actually,
she'd be a great guest.
Yeah, we're talking about it right now.
They do an incredible job of connecting through their Facebooks.
They do.
It feels like they're talking to you. It's like one of my favorite books is Cash by Johnny Cash.
Good name for a book by Johnny Cash.
Right. And that's what it feels like, a conversation. So I think they're really successful at putting themselves into it. You know what I mean? And people respond to that a lot better.
They do. I do. And I mean, I say this a lot, and it's probably not what people want to hear, but I can only go off of what I know and what I like. And so a lot of times when I'm making a decision, I have to search myself for it. And when it comes to social media, that's how I base it. I'm like, look, if I'm responding to it, because I'm, again, apprehensive, and I usually wait a hot minute, before I get involved in something. And if something just can tear down my apprehension very quickly, then I typically will say, that's something's working about that. And, that comes with putting an unguarded self out there sometimes. And they're good at that. Morgan and Denisha both. You're right. Those two particularly stand out above the rest, in my opinion.
Definitely.
That's something I struggle with, man. I ain't gonna lie. Like, this show was hard for me because I don't really love being out front.
Oh yeah, gosh, me either.
You know, I didn't want to have to even put my picture on the cover, but I was like, you know, the podcasts and shows and things like that. One of my favorite TV shows is called Expedition Unknown. And why do I like that show? I've asked myself that. I followed the host he's had 3 different shows on 3 different networks, and I followed him from network to network. And every time he's got a new show, I'm like, oh, I get so excited. And it's because I like the guy. I don't care. He could go do anything.
Right.
I'm going to watch that show because he is a nice guy. And when I'm watching him, I think he's authentic. It's part of what I liked about Anthony Bourdain.
Right.
You know, he's another one that there's an unguardedness, man, and authenticness. And man, I think the reason that those people like that shine is because we are hungry for that, man.
Right. Well, it takes a certain bravery too to be that unguarded. It's just like, you know, that's why I appreciate artists and musicians so much. It's to put yourself out there in such a way, you know, you create this piece of work and you stand up on a stage and sing your words, you know, your feelings, your heart. I mean, that's, I've always respected the bravery, even if, you know, it is a developing talent. It's not about that. It's about someone who is up there sharing. That's a very brave thing. Something that should be respected.
I agree. I was terrible. I'm still terrible at it. It just depends on what it is. I can do this to some degree, I think, because there's not a camera in my face.
Right.
You know? And sometimes I wonder if that's not why I preferred to be the director or behind the camera, because I never had to be on the camera.
Right.
Years ago when I worked at an ad agency, you know, a lot of the local, we're all still guilty of it because honestly, budgets are just smaller in Southwest Louisiana than they are in some areas. And, you know, the talent pool, you'll notice, you'll see a lot of the same people in commercials over and over. And 9 times out of 10, an agency is going to lean on having some of their own people in the commercial just to save money.
Right.
And so I didn't know that. You know, I was young and I was starting over, and I got put in this local commercial. And this is what I told them. I said, look, I'll do anything you want me to do as long as you can promise me I don't ever have to see it. I'm like, well, you're going to see it if you watch TV. And I was like, well, I don't want to look at the proofs. I don't want to look at the B-roll. I don't want to watch the editing, or I will not do it. I just can't do it. I mean, that's how I felt, man. I was freaking out. I didn't even really want to, because I was worried, so self-conscious about that camera on me. And that slowly wore off, maybe to some degree. But hey, I think you're right. You know, even like Pourquoi Pas, going back to that. I mean, taking those folks like you and others who are just willing to stick it out there and go, let's just give it a shot, man. Let's just roll it and go.
See what happens.
What happens, right. Man. Yeah, well, I think that, you know, that's good. I think that we need more of that in our community, keep that alive. And it sounds like it's still living, like you said.
Yeah, I think so.
And I love you just